The Baltimore Ravens clinched the AFC North, and with this win, they will host the slumping Pittsburgh Steelers next week on Wild Card Weekend. This matchup coming up next Saturday will be the rubber match as the two teams split the season series 1-1. It's been a tale of different teams since the first matchup to the second matchup. In the first matchup in Pittsburgh, the Ravens were still finding themselves. They were up and down, and most of the time, and especially against the Pittsburgh Steelers, they struggled. And Mike Tomlin with Russell Wilson on a hot streak, they were unbeaten in that many starts in that first matchup. But since in the second matchup, the Steelers have tailed off and they got into this slump. And in fact, they closed out the season on a 4-game losing streak to end the regular season. With an opportunity to improve their seeding upon their matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, the Steelers offense looked totally anemic. George Pickens, their star standout receiver, struggled. He had 3 drops on Saturday night, including and 1 catch for 0 yards. Outside of Pat Freiermuth, I am not scared of a single pass catcher or weapon for the Steelers offense. Najee Harris was stuffed in the backfield countless times against a okay Cincinnati defense, but Russell Wilson, the decision making late, especially against the Bengals, where he advanced the ball, rushing the ball instead of throwing it out of bounds when he could have had a chance to get Chris Boswell into field goal range. The decision making is very lackluster for Russell Wilson in the last month of the regular season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've seen now that Russell Wilson is a boom or bust type of player recently. Unless the deep ball is working, he doesn't have a mid-range or intermediate game. If he hit you with the short passes to get the ball out of his hands quick, that's one thing, but usually the deep balls are part of him out of the pocket on a bootleg or just scrambling in the pocket and then finding somebody deep. They have a chance to rewrite the narratives in the postseason. This is a team that they are very familiar with. But this Ravens team, since the bye week, has been a perfect 4-0 to close out the season. And I think that bye week was the perfect reset. They had a chance to recalibrate, reset, catch their breath, and since then the Ravens have been playing virtually perfect football. Again, the competition hasn't been the greatest, but still you have to play who's on your schedule, and I think the Ravens took care of business to close out the season. Lamar has looked like an MVP candidate, and they should have a heavy dose of him running the ball and Derrick Henry, because Derrick Henry, I think, is the X factor in this game. If he's able to bludgeon the Steelers defense, which has been lackluster to say the least as of late, I think the Ravens have a chance to really blow out the Steelers in this wildcard matchup. I don't think, while the Ravens defense hasn't been the greatest, they looked really good in their second matchup. Marlon Humphrey baiting Russell Wilson into a pick 6, and this Ravens defense is finally finding their way after a poor start to this year. They're not perfect, but they do get the job done and they get stops when they need to. The one thing I'm a little bit nervous about for the Baltimore Ravens is the potential absence of Zay Flowers. Now, Zay picked up a terrible knee sprain in the season finale against the Browns, and he is unlikely to suit up for this wildcard matchup next Saturday. It could be something that lingers where he could miss more time in the postseason, and that's unfortunate. He is the number 1 receiver for this Ravens team. He is a do-it-all kind of guy. If you get the ball in his hands, he's going to make plays, where it's a deep ball, a short pass, whatever have you. Zay Flowers is an integral cog in the Ravens offensive machine. But at least for this week, I do think without him, they still have enough to get by the Steelers, not just barely, but comfortably. And if the Steelers end up losing this game, this not only extends their playoff drought to 9 years. If you think about the last 6 postseason games they played, they have lost all of them. And like I said, this playoff drought is getting to be very concerning. I've been on this platform throughout this entire year when I noticed that the Steelers have been settling for just above average. Mike Tomlin has gotten you to the Super Bowl way back in 2008, and that is wonderful. He's bursted onto the scene. He was at the time the youngest head coach to win a Super Bowl. However, since then, it has been a bunch of 8-8, 9-7 records, and now it's been bolstered up to 9-8 and 10-7. That is great. Postseason appearances are great. But remember when Marvin Lewis was leading the Cincinnati Bengals, for example? He had a terrible record of leading great Bengals teams but then floundering in the playoffs. Now, Marvin Lewis is not the same kind of coach, and the Steelers aren't the same type of team as those old Bengals were, but they're beginning to look like it because in the recent years they've had issues, especially in, you can say that it's been post Ben Roethlisberger. Even with Ben Roethlisberger at the tail end of his career, they struggled when he was in the lineup. And I think we need to have a conversation about Mike Tomlin's future with the Pittsburgh Steelers, because this is a class act organization and they won't fire him due to these causes. But a playoff appearance is still a playoff appearance. But the conversations need to be had that the hot seat for Mike Tomlin might need to be a little bit hotter. And if they do flame out this year in the wild card round, I think they need to have a conversation that next year is put up or shut up, or you are going to be shown the door.